Time for the 49ers Rush podcast. And here's your host, John Chapman.
All right, what is going on, 49ers faithful? Welcome to another episode of the 49ers Rush podcast. I believe this is episode 597 as we approach another milestone. I say with a question mark at the end of it, Ron Burgundy. With me is the handsome fellow Brian from Legit Football. That means it must be Thursday. How's life, Brian?
It's great. I've told you multiple times. I look forward to this. I've got it locked in my calendar. 3:30 Pacific every Thursday. We have some fun, and I get to know the Niners a little bit more. You know, they're actually kind of my hometown team now. I've told you before. I'm about 15 minutes from Levi Stadium as a Dolphins fan, so I'm feeling a little bit more attached to San Francisco these days. You know.
Dude, I freaking love it. Shout out to all the hashtag CC people, which we're giving away 2 shirts today. So that's another thing that, you know, we're giving away 1 shirt to a hashtag CC. We're giving away another shirt to a new subscriber the past 40 days. We just give stuff away here, and shout out to all the hashtag CCs. Get them in. We're giving stuff away today. So you want to make sure you get that in. Now, the agenda for today's show is a little bit different than what we've done here on 49ers Rush Podcast. On Thursdays, when we have Brian, we try to broaden our perspective across the NFL with our 49ers, a little more NFL centric. But today we're dipping into the fantasy football world through a lens of the 49ers. So Brian, kind of walk us through what this process is going to look like and what our goals are.
Yeah, so I'm always trying to brainstorm ideas for this show because, like I said, I love coming on it. I wanna bring you and the faithful that NFL perspective, but at the same time trying to ground it in the Niners because, I mean, after all, this is a 49ers show. So I came up with this idea. Look, it's fantasy season, right? A lot of fantasy football drafts are happening right around now in August, kind of leading up to the season. And so I had this idea of why don't we take the profiles, the fantasy profiles of the fantasy relevant 49ers players and kind of stack them up against the rest of the fantasy players in their particular positions. So obviously we're going to go through quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end. I thought that would be a fun exercise to obviously dig a little deeper on the skill players for the Niners, but also kind of peel back and look a little bit broader about where they compare from a fantasy angle with regards to the upcoming fantasy season.
I like that. It's going to be fun. And we got a lot. And let me just throw this. I got to do my little promo here. We are setting up a fantasy football league, a best ball fantasy league, which I think is going to be an absolute blast. We already filled up one of our leagues. Here's how it works. Very simple. Best ball, if you've never done best ball, it's the best thing of fantasy. You draft and then you're done. What happens is you fill your roster up and you draft 20 players and it fills your best lineup every week. You don't have to do lineups. There's no trades. You set it and then you're done for the season. And what happens is it costs $50 to join unless you're a Patreon member, then it's half off or free. But it's $50 to join. And the first and second for each league gets their pick of an autographed memorabilia. I've got Joe Montana jersey signed. I've got a George Kittle mini helmet. I got a Jerry Rice jersey signed, all these different things. So as many leagues as we get, we're going to keep getting more memorabilia for that. It's a lot of fun. And again, if you want to join, all you got to do, it's $50 and you just PayPal it. My PayPal address is at Lamar Chapman, $50. Just leave your email in the notes. Do not say anything about fantasy football. PayPal hates that. They'll block my account. So just leave your email that you want to be on there, and you can do that. Now, again, if you are a Patreon member, if you're a Frank Gore tier, it's half off. It's only $25. And if you're a Jerry Rice tier member, it's free. We'll pay for it for you. And if you're one of those people that's been on the fence, should I join or should I not? That's cool. Join. You get those cost benefits the second you join. We believe in our content. We started a whole Football 101 series over on Patreon. Today, we broke down what the cover 3 looks like and what makes the 4-2-5, the strengths and all that stuff. So we got a lot of content going on over there on Patreon. Now, let's get to the meat and potatoes of the show, my friend. How do we want to start with this? Do we want to go player by player? How do you want to do this?
Yeah, we'll break it down by position group, but I want to give a little background first. I actually think this is relevant. I've been playing fantasy football for probably 20 years. Just to let you know, John, I've been doing it since, we had pen and paper, and we would either have to use the Monday newspaper and get the box scores, or we'd have to watch NFL primetime and literally write down the transactions or the stats and the touchdowns and receptions and all of that. So fantasy has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember, longer than even I've been obsessed with the NFL. So I'm super excited about this particular episode. But I thought we'd start at the quarterback position. That's the big thing. That's everybody wants to know. I know you guys are high on Lance, and you should be, but we're still we at the end of the day we don't know what we're getting yet, which is exciting. That you guys should be excited because it's only hope at this point, right? There's not really a lot of reason not to be hopeful. So I figured we'd start there. So here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to talk about how they finished 2021, what their average draft position is. According to Sleeper. So if you guys aren't familiar, I'm using Sleeper rankings. Highly recommend Sleeper for a fantasy platform. Just to kind of have an even playing field as far as where we're statistics and rankings. I did it as a redraft league, so we're not talking dynasty. Although it will come in handy for your best ball. So if you're using this for research for the 49ers Rush best ball, this is good stuff for you. Half PPR, and we figured like a 12 team as far as average drafting rounds. So we'll start in quarterback. 2021 ranking for Trey Lance. He doesn't have one. He didn't play enough to really have a ranking. Yeah. So we just left that at NA, which is good because basically you have a very, very small sample size, so much that you can't make any judgments yet. To be honest, most of the judgments we're making is based on potential alone, based on the offense that we know that Shanahan runs, based on the weapons that they have, and based on Lance's physical skills. So his ADP right now on Sleeper is QB 13, which from a 12-team league perspective is you can get him like at the early 10th round, kind of end of the 9th, early 10th, if you kind of want to get an idea where you have him. Does that surprise you, John? What are your thoughts on kind of
that? Here's the thing that is interesting to me. If you never played fantasy, the quarterback position and rushing is everything because the rushing stats are what set people apart. If you look at the top performing, Josh Allen, Herbert, Lamar Jackson, all those guys. There's lots of other ones. Jalen Hurts is up there.
Even Mahomes adds it with his rushing totals.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. He rushes for a lot of first downs. Now, if you look at like Jimmy Garoppolo last year, who only played 15 games, no rushing ability whatsoever, he finished as the 17th best quarterback last year. So you mean to tell me if Trey Lance and some of his rushing and whatever else comes in at 13, I'm just going to say he's going to be a top 10 quarterback. Now, I've been on the Trey Lance hype train for a long time. And again, you've got to understand it's not about – this is the thing about fantasy. It's not about the best player. It's not about the best quarterback. It's about who's going to get yards, who's going to get touchdowns. And that's why I would say personally, again, the ADP average draft position, he's going 13th, as you said. Man, I'm going to put him 10. I'm going to put him right at that 10 spot just because the rushing ability is going to drive it up so much.
Agreed. And to give you guys a perspective, Jalen Hurts, who we talked about on my show, actually, John, if you guys caught the show, I asked John about his thoughts on Jalen Hurts, and jury's out on him as an NFL quarterback, but he was actually the QB1 in fantasy for the first half of last year. So it's not, like John said, it's not just about the best quarterbacks. It's all about fantasy opportunity. Rushing for QBs is a huge bonus. I like QB10. I want to see. I don't like projecting rookie quarterbacks. And to me, he's kind of a rookie. He just didn't have enough. He didn't have a ton of experience at North Dakota State.
10 quarters. He played 10 quarters last year.
And he played very little last year. So I'm kind of still throwing him in. He's got a step above the current rookies, but I'm still kind of putting him in there. So I've got him kind of in the same range. I didn't want to put him in. Do I think he has the potential to be top 10? Absolutely. And I think he could even be like top 7, top 8 if they really rely on his legs a lot, which I could see Shanahan doing. I have him as QB 14. I had, according to the Sleeper, they had Derek Carr behind him, and I actually think Carr, for a number of reasons, is set to have a really good fantasy season. So I bumped Carr up, bumped Lance back 1. I do have him ahead of quarterbacks like Kirk Cousins, mainly because of that rushing ability. But that does not mean I don't think he could easily finish top 10. And I do think he's a value in drafts. If you're talking about if you don't want to spend on one of these top tier quarterbacks and you want to invest in running backs or wide receivers early in your draft, and you can get Trey Lance in the 9th round, like that's a nice strategy. That is a strategy, not just as a Niners fan, but that's a strategy as a fantasy fan that you could actually use.
I'm pretty big on waiting on QBs. Now, if you're in a 1 quarterback format, which if you're in a super flex or 2 QB format, that's where the fun's at. You know, the leagues that I'm in that are super flex, where you can start 2 quarterbacks, it makes the quarterback position very, very important. If I'm in a 1 quarterback league, I'm waiting because I don't mind starting somebody like Matt Ryan or Jameis Winston, who are, you know, going in the 20s. If it's 12 teams and everybody has 1 quarterback, that's 12 quarterbacks. I'm cool. I don't mind waiting. But if it's a super flex or 2 QB, that's where it gets important. And I'm willing to bet in our best ball leagues, which the first league just got started, Trey Lance going to go pretty early.
Oh, yes. As a Niners, he's probably going to be like one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks taken. It's just the nature
Melissa,
of...
glad to have you here.
Hi, Melissa. How you doing?
Now, okay, so that's the quarterback, Trey Lance. I got him around 10. You got him around 14.
Yep.
Let's go running back.
Okay.
Because if you look at Elijah Mitchell and what he got accomplished last year, people don't understand. Elijah Mitchell, he only played in 12 games. He didn't play much. Injuries were rough, all that. Having said that, he finished as the 24th best running back. Now, for your rankings, are you doing, do you do PPR, half point PPR?
Did half PPR,
Okay.
and I did do Superflex just by default, like you. Most of my leagues are Superflex, which is, for all intents and purposes, 2 quarterbacks. You usually don't want to start a non-quarterback in that.
For the non-fantasy peeps, that's okay because you're going to learn a lot about stat projections through this conversation. PPR stands for points per reception. So every catch that he makes out of the backfield, he gets half of a point added. So if you look at the half point PPR, so half a point for every catch, now he finishes number 25, the 25th running back. But again, he only played 12 games, and he averaged 13 points a game. If, let's just say he played, you know, those 5 extra games, you're adding, what was that, 65 more points to his total. Well, that's going to bump him up to running back number 8, tied with Alvin Kamara. Like, he had a productive year. Where do you rank him, and do you think that his usage will go up in 2022?
So there's a couple caveats here. One, you mentioned the injuries, which is always a concern. Especially at the running back position. But number 2, it is the history of the way Shanahan uses his running backs. And that is, to me, certainty is a big deal in fantasy football. Yeah. It has nothing to do with talent. It has to do with Shanahan is notorious for completely switching up his running back rotation without any warning. There's the famous Matthew Berry thing where he needed a single point from. So Matthew Berry is like one of the most famous fantasy analysts. He needed 1 point from Alfred Morris, and instead I think they started a doubtful Raheem Mostert, who wasn't expected to start. It was something along those lines because and Shanahan just gave no indication that it was going to go that way. So that's why I'm higher on Mitchell than the consensus. So the ADP right now on Sleeper is RB24, which puts him about the mid-5th round. I've got him as running back 22. I 100% believe he's capable of being higher than that from a talent perspective. I think Mitchell was a steal for the 49ers last year, and if he can stay healthy and if he is actually the RB1, is going to get 70% or more of those touches, I think he can have RB12, RB10 potential. I just don't trust Shanahan enough to invest a high enough pick in him that he's not going to have, you still got Wilson there. Sermon, I mean, you might know more than me. It didn't look great as, he kind of fell off to start last season, but you drafted Ty Davis Price. It's like you have all these toys that Shanahan likes to play around with his toys, and Lance is going to be running a lot. Does that take away carries from the running game? So I bumped him up a little, but to me personally, there's so much uncertainty that I can't really bump him into like the top 15 tier.
The one thing that I will say about Elijah Mitchell is that he has kind of cemented his way into that starting role. And so, are there going to be weeks where it's like you don't know if he's injured or if he's going to go, and you find out, right before kickoff, he's a scratch, whatever. Those things might happen. But I think that he's going to be used. He's going to be. And I have always valued running backs with a running quarterback, not named Cam Newton, more than having because again, it opens up running lanes. Cam Newton would take everybody's touchdowns. That's what bothered me about Cam Newton. But every other mobile quarterback, it just freezes those backside linebackers to where Elijah Mitchell, it gives them an opportunity for bigger running lanes. I
Well,
like
here's a
Mitchell.
specific question with you, John. With regards to that, as someone who's seen training camps and seen practices, are they running any like read options? Because that is specifically where that benefits the running back. If it's
Yes.
just having a running or a mobile quarterback and he's just handing it off, that doesn't give a benefit. But if there's read options to where the linebackers and the defensive ends have to have that extra second of hesitation, then you're 100% right. It opens up running lanes for running backs.
Yeah, and what Brian's asking here, the read option, this is where the quarterback goes to give and looks at, he's reading one of the defenders. It can be a defensive end, backside backer, safety, whatever. It doesn't matter. The funny thing is the 49ers have been running read options with Jimmy Garoppolo. They're just automatic gives. They're automatic gives.
You can't tell their options because he just hands it off every time.
So, they have been doing that. And when Trey Lance came in some last year, they actually, he was allowed to pull those. They still give him automatic calls sometimes. But, so I'm telling you right now, I'm really high on Elijah Mitchell just from a consistency standpoint. He's going to get carries in a top 5 rushing attack in the NFL. Will he get the touchdowns? Will he get the receptions? I think that's 2 areas of concern. But, man, the carries are going to be there. The offensive line is going to be there. The mobile quarterback's going to be there. 24. And, again, if you're looking at, okay, who are the guys around him? I'm looking at Fantasy Pros here. Elijah Mitchell's 21 for them. Breece Hall for the Jets, he's going to be in a timeshare. Antonio Gibson, okay, I like Gibson more. But, they did just draft Brian Robinson. We'll see there.
Yeah,
they have their
Gibson
own
will be
catcher.
in more of a timeshare. I have a feeling that Breece Hall is going to – we actually reported in Legit Football recently that 60 to 65% of the carries are expected to go to Hall. That doesn't mean that'll happen.
Dude, I'm team Michael Carter, man. And Breece Hall is
like
good,
Carter.
but
I like Carter.
I'm a big – anyway. All right. Now, before we jump to wide receivers, let's give away a shirt. Hashtag CC members. I'm going back, man, because this is awesome right here. Stephen Fox, who's a great supporter of the show, I want to say thank you, man. He says, me and my brother are going to the Niners Kansas City game. It will be his 3rd game, his brother's 1st. I love extending that out and getting people to the games. I love people getting together. That's the whole 49ers Rush road trip thing, man. That's what we're about, building the community. He got in the very first hashtag CC today before we went live. So, Steven, I want to say congratulations. You are the winner of our first T-shirt. And we've got a couple options. You're going to have your choice to pick. This is our new logo and, just straight up one that you can get right here. Or you can do the one I'm wearing. I love this shirt. It says, I was drafted by the 49ers and all I got was this red shirt because Shanahan red shirts all of his 49ers then. So email me 49ersrushpodcast@gmail.com. I'll get your details. I'll get that ordered and sent out for you free of charge. I want to say thank you for your support. Man, that's our second giveaway. We gave away a Brandon Ayuk side jersey on Tuesday. And then here, after we get through a couple of wide receivers, we'll be giving away another shirt to a new subscriber in the past 40 days. Thank you, Dave. Yeah, this was my idea. I really wanted this shirt. And so I talked to my logo guy, Dale, who Brian knows if you've been out to any of our Rush road trips. Awesome guy. He made it work. So I love these. Now, if you want one of these shirts, guess what? In the description of YouTube, every video, we passed 10,000 subscribers, so that comes with some perks. It's embedded in every video. So if you just minimize from full screen, go down below the description, you can see the T-shirts there. Also, the link is in the description of every video. And if you're listening to audio podcasts, it's in the description of that as well. So that's there as well. So if you want one of those shirts, support the show. We got some merch. It's what it is. We're taking steps over here. Now, speaking of taking steps, wide receivers are going to be a little tricky for you to jump into.
I'm going to make 2 more points about running backs before we move
sure.
on.
Of course. Yes.
One, you were mentioning the read option with the Shanahan offense. There is a little bit of precedent for that. If we go back to his RG3, his rookie season with Washington when Shanahan was the offensive coordinator, and you think of it, that was Alfred Morris was the running back there, and it just really – he had a fantastic season. Honestly, was never really able to reproduce that. So if the Niners are able to kind of reproduce that same RG3 style read option, then Mitchell goes way up and you're getting a huge steal there. So that's point number 1. Point number 2, if you are going to draft Mitchell, because of the injury concerns and because of the way Shanahan likes to rotate his running backs, get another one of those running backs. I like Ty Davis Price. His ADP right now is running back 55. So you can get him super late or maybe even pick him up as a free agent. So get one of those others. If you want to get Jeff Wilson, that's fine too. But if you're going to draft Mitchell, secure yourself in a handcuff and get another one of those Niners running backs.
If you are going to handcuff, I would recommend TDP as well. I would not recommend Jeff Wilson. I'd say Trey Sermon over that, but I wouldn't touch anybody else outside of TDP.
TDP was my choice, yeah.
And Elijah Mitchell. That's just because, again, you look at Jeff Wilson, he was active this last 5 games. He got 0 touches, even though he was active. So I don't know. But if everybody gets hurt, he could have another 3 touchdown game, which we've seen him do as well. But
you never know.
I'm staying away from that one.
So, yeah, let's move on to wide receiver, Deebo Samuel. So I'm a big Deebo fan, not just, I think I actually mentioned when I was first on your show for the draft party, you asked me about the whole Deebo news, and he was on my fantasy team. So, I'm happy to keep him on the – I actually have him on my Dynasty League. So he finished last season as wide receiver 3. Right. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that he was getting a lot of running back carries as well. But I still think he would have been a top 5 wide receiver even without that. Current ADP is wide receiver 8 with regards to sleeper. Late second round. Now, some of that I have no doubt is due to his contract situation, right? Because once again, uncertainty is like a fantasy player's nightmare. You don't want that uncertainty. I'm not basing my projections on that. I think I'm pretty confident from my conversation with you, John, and just in following the league in general, that he will be playing for the Niners come week 1.
100%.
He'll be getting his normal work share, maybe less of the running back carries, but I think that'll just open him up more as a wide receiver. So I have him as wide receiver 6. And it's not that I'm not high on him to have him higher, but I looked at the names ahead of him. So just to let you know, the top 5: Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, and Stephon Diggs. I mean, those are super elite wide receivers. Could Deebo outperform those guys? Certainly he did most of them last year, but I just think, they'll want to spread the ball out a little more. Hopefully Ayuk makes a step. They'll run the ball more. I think the Niners, which should just lower the volume in general. So wide receiver 6, that's where I've got Deebo Samuel pegged right now.
I think that's a good spot for him, because if you look at what he did last year, the rushing was just bonkers, right? 365 extra yards rushing, but 8 touchdowns on the ground. Yeah. That's not going to be replicated. I do have him signing with the 49ers. He'll be here. But I don't know. This new contract, and we're not going to know this, okay? I was talking about this with Wayne Breezy. If that guaranteed number is much higher than, what A.J. Brown signed, what Terry McLaurin signed, that's going to tell me they're going to use him as a running back. If that number is lower, they're just going to let him be a wide receiver. But again, we're not going to know. We're not going to know. That guarantee number, I think, will tell us a lot. But they're not going to say, yeah, we signed this deal with the handshake agreement. He's going to get 2 carries a game. That's not going to happen. We're not going to know. So we'll just have to kind of wait and see, but do not expect the same rushing out point. He had 1,400 yards receiving last year, though. Can that go up? Sure, but probably not by much. Right. Yeah, I think 6 to 10 is probably the right place for him. Even though he's incredible, I think Ayuk's going to get an uptick, which I want to talk about with you here a second. Yeah, let's take next. That. Let's go there. Let's go through your Ayuk spill.
One last stat on Samuel. So one of the questions besides the whole contract situation is the fact that he's got a new quarterback. That's, once again, we're reiterating the uncertainty. But how many snaps did you say Lance had last year?
He played 10 quarters.
10 quarters.
I can tell you the exact. Yeah.
10
you
quarters
go on to your point. I'll find it for you.
10 quarters. He already has 3 touchdown passes to Deebo Samuel. He's already kind of shown that connection. So I'm not personally worried about that connection. I am a little worried based on stuff that I've read. And John, maybe you know differently. The next wide receiver we're talking about when it comes to connection, that's Ayuk. I've actually seen some reports that he has not necessarily been on the same page with Lance with regards to OTAs and minicamp. But so Brandon Ayuk, 2021, finished as wide receiver 35. The advantage there, or kind of the nice nugget with that number, is that most of that was in the second half of the season. He did the whole Shanahan doghouse for the first half, or for whatever reason, John, maybe you can enlighten me on that. But the second half of the season, they kind of let him in more. He had a lot more snaps. He had a lot more targets. He had 10 or more fantasy points in 7 of the final 10 weeks of the fantasy season. So the fantasy season, I'm counting that as ending in week 17. So that means the majority of that was in the second half of the season, which is great to hear. He's currently ADP is average draft position is wide receiver 42. So the consensus is that he's not going to finish as good as he did last year, which I think is, a little
I'm going against
pessimistic.
that. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
going
a little
against that.
pessimistic. Late 8th round in a 12-team league. So I've got him kind of in this early 30s. I've got him at like 34. So I think he's going to finish. And here's why. Kind of the same. Not that he can't finish higher than that. And like I said, he finished the year strong, but they're going to be running the ball more. We're not necessarily seeing that connection with Lance yet. Doesn't mean it can't develop. So I think early 30s, which is, if you've got a flex position or a third wide receiver, that's a wide receiver 3. That's still valuable. And if the rest of the league is drafting him late 8th, you can probably get him in the 6th or 7th round, still have good value. And I think IU could return on that.
My thing with Ayuk and Trey Lance, Trey Lance played 179 snaps last year.
179. Okay.
179. So not that many.
Right.
But the thing is, like, Jimmy Garoppolo can't throw the deep ball. Probably one of the worst deep ball throwers in the NFL. Yeah, I don't think anybody would really disagree with that. Ayuk's specialty is the deep ball. If you go back to his time at Arizona State and all those things, that's why I think maybe his targets might not be as high, but the quality of targets and the depth of targets, those air yards, that's going to be through the roof. So I think, Ayuk's going to have a couple games where he shows up and gets a 60-yard touchdown, something along that. So, and yeah, man, I don't know. I think it's there. And, videos just came out yesterday. Thanks, Clayton, our producer. He reminded me of this. They're hanging out yesterday.
I saw that. I saw that they are trying to build that chemistry. I'll hand them that. I did see those reports as well.
And also, I'll be honest. When Trey Lance was first drafted, the first person that worked out with him, BA, Brandon Ayuk's been there. So, man, I think I got a lot of hope here. And if I think there's any wide receiver or any pass catcher, even George Kittle included, that gains from Trey Lance, I'm putting Ayuk at the top of that list.
Yeah, I can't fault that. Like, just the fact that I have them about almost 8 to 10 spots ahead of the consensus lets you know I'm kind of in the same ballpark. I'm just not ready to put him as like a top 20 wide receiver. But I do think that this is, if you're looking for value, this is a guy that you can get, even as a Niners fan, get him ahead of the consensus, because a lot of people tend to be kind of discounting him for whatever reason. So hopefully for your sake, if you draft him, he continues with how he finished the season.
Look at this from 49ers faithful forever. He says, off topic, but hot take. Ayuk won't be a long-term 49er. That's interesting. Do you pay both your wide receivers a lot of money? Debo's going to get his deal here in about 2 weeks. I think I told everybody August 2nd was the day. That's my projection for when Debo deal will get done. That's interesting. I like Ayuk. I hope he's around. Right now, if he was to re-sign a deal with where he's at, it wouldn't be super expensive. But yeah, we'll have to see there. That's interesting.
I think his season, this particular season for Ayuk, is going to determine that.
That third year.
Correct. So if he has if he makes that leap, then yeah, it's going to be tough to sign both of those guys. I think Kittle's coming up on an extension too, correct? So, I mean, you've got...
He just signed his. Yeah, Kittle just signed his 2 years ago. So Kittle's good.
Bosa's
about to be good.
Bosa's
that's going to break the bank right there, man.
Right. So, I mean, you've got all these contracts that you have to dole out. So if Ayuk has a great season, I don't think that's a bad point, that he could end up not being on San Francisco, 2 to 3 years from now.
I like it. Oh, Melissa says, Brandon, every game through and caught with Lance, would even run plays for the game with Brandon, Chapman in each other's corner for a while. I agree. Yeah, they have been, as close as you can be, and, making fun of each other on Instagram and things like that. I love that stuff. And I love how Brandon Ayuk was making fun of all the arm fatigue BS reports that are out there.
That was funny. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Now, before we jump to our next player, or do you have any more Ayuk stuff? I want to do another giveaway.
Yeah, just what I was reading was not that off the field stuff. Like, from everything I'm seeing, like, Ayuk is doing everything he can. But from what I read, that during OTAs and minicamps, it was actually Ray McLeod was performing better than Ayuk was. So that might not mean anything. And sometimes that off, the minicamp stuff means nothing comes start of the season. But that's kind of where I'm getting my information from. And that with the fact that Debo wasn't there and Ayuk didn't take advantage to just be that guy, these are the kind of things we have to ask ourselves. I hope for the faithful that I'm wrong, but that's why I'm not ready to kind of throw him in that top 20 wide receiver conversation yet.
Training camp's going to be interesting. Yeah. Training camp is you cannot get through. Let me say this in a better way. You can't hide because so many of the training camp practices are open. And you can go buy your tickets now. The 49ers released all their dates that you can go to that if you want to. But, like, yeah, you can't hide. So if that's something you want to do, whew, there it is. So let's do another giveaway. This is to a recent subscriber in the last 40 days. Congratulations to BayRider408, one of the YouTube subscribers, BayRider408. Congratulations. Reach out to me. If you're not watching this live, you're watching it late. You can email me, 49ersrushpodcast@gmail.com, or Twitter at JL_Chapman. All right. What do we got next, Brian?
We're going to finish up with the tight end position, and we've got the beast, George Kittle.
The beast.
Finishing 2021 as tight end 4, and ADP exactly the same. So he is going as the 4th tight end off the board as far as round, early 4th. So maybe late 3rd if you're trying to target him to get him on your fantasy team. Yeah, I think I've got him as tight end 3. I think I have him ahead of Pitts. A lot of the ADP has Kyle Pitts going as the 3rd overall tight end. I think Pitts is a fantastic play and maybe the number 1 overall in Dynasty. I'm not ready to put Kyle Pitts over George Kittle on my fantasy team for a redraft league. So I've got, Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, clear, undisputed top 2. Looks like we have a Twitter thread up there.
We do. I put this out last night, and I think it's about to end. It's got 3 hours left. I just asked a simple question. Which 49ers tight end is the best? And I left it open-ended. I didn't want to get into like any of the crazy stuff or whatever. Brent Jones, Vernon Davis, and George Kittle. I want you guys to throw this up in the chat. Who you think? Which 49ers tight end is the best? We had over 3,300 votes. So this I was shocked by this. George Kittle's winning handedly, 65%. Vernon Davis, 23%. Brent Jones, 10%. That pissed me off. I ain't gonna lie. Like, I love George Kittle. I get it. I thought it was going to be closer to Kittle 40%, Vernon Davis 30%, Jones 30%. But it kind of went from wherever, and it kind of blew up. A bunch of people started hating each other and yelling at each other and all these different things. But I thought it was important to share kind of just how great Kittle is. I mean, he's incredible. There's no doubt about it. Melissa says George Kittle with 20 exclamation points. I felt it. I love the energy. But man, Brent Jones and Vernon Davis. Vernon Davis had 2 years with 13 touchdowns. Anyway, so throw up there.
Just for my quick 2 cents, I would also say Kittle. Vernon Davis was great, but if I'm putting a team together now, Davis at his peak, Kittle at his peak, assuming health, I'm going Kittle.
Assuming health, there you go. Yeah, and that's the thing. Vernon Davis and Brent Jones played for 10 years.
Yeah,
Kittle's not even at the halfway point of that yet. So I hope he gets there. I really, really do. I love all 3 of them. Brent Jones, man, I love playing tight end because of Brent Jones whenever I was a kid. Anyway, so back to recent production with George Kittle.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, I put him at tight end 3 ahead of Kyle Pitts. Can't really put him ahead of Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews because they have just dominated the tight end landscape for the past few years. Kelce has done it for, I feel like, 8 or 9 seasons. Andrews is really starting to kind of be that dominant. He had an insane amount of targets last year as mainly the only pass catcher in Baltimore.
And both of them lost their primary wide receiver 1, Tyreek Hill and Marquise Brown. So Kittle, Kelce and Holly, or what's his name? His name's Mark Andrews. Both likely more targets, if that's possible.
I think Kelce certainly will. The one question is Kelce has to slow down at some point. Unlike quarterback position, we talk about Brady playing in his 50s or whatever, tight end is such a physical position. So it's just, we looked at how Gronk kind of was fading in his early 30s. And Kelce is 33, I think is going to be 34 during the season. And that just eventually is going to come down, especially if his target share goes up because there is no Tyreek Hill there. So I think Mark Andrews will finish as the tight end 1. I'm still ranking Kelce ahead, but I could see if Kittle stays healthy as him finishing as tight end 2 behind Andrews. Because Andrews at Baltimore, Rashad Bateman, he's kind of like the darling sleeper, but Andrews is the wide receiver 1 for all intents and purposes in Baltimore. So unless he gets injured, it's hard not to see him just getting an insane amount of targets again. But I could see Kelce slowing down a step and then having Kittle jump into that tight end 2 spot. I have him right now as tight end 3.
Yeah, the uncertainty. You don't know how Kittle's going to do with Trey Lance.
Right.
A lot of we just don't know. We just don't know. So that's one of the things. And you look everywhere else, all the same quarterbacks being matched up, except for Kyle Pitts, which I don't know. I'm not the highest on Kyle Pitts and his fantasy production because they added Drake London. They took a huge step down in quarterback from Matt Ryan to Mariota or Desmond Ritter. Like, I don't know. I'm not so sold on, Kyle Pitts taking over the world yet, fantasy wise. I just don't see it.
That's more just even if they added London, that's just a lack of other targets. There's just not a lot of weapons in Atlanta, so he's just gonna get funneled a lot of the targets, especially in the red zone. So he may not have the receptions, but I could see him having 10 touchdowns. But also that's why I put him behind Kittle, and I think Pitts is better long term. Because Atlanta will be drafting a quarterback.
He's still young.
He's still young. He's like 22. He was 21 last year. So I mean, if you're talking about dynasty for the next 10 years. It's hard to do better than Pitts because that physical stature is just impressive.
I love it, man. Man, this has been a blast. I'm ready to go. And if you guys, again, want to participate in our competition, our fantasy competition, again, let's throw that up there if you can. Our 49ers Rush Best Ball League. Again, all you got to do is just PayPal. It's $50. A lot of these jerseys are several $100. Man, that Kittle mini helmet, I thought I could get one on the cheap. Nope. Yeah, very, very expensive. But that's okay. Just an extra way to, beef up your memorabilia game and have fun and compete against other 49ers faithful. It's going to be a blast. All you got to do is just PayPal $50 to @Lamar Chapman. You'll see my ugly face on there. Put your email. Do not put fantasy, please, in the description or the notes, and we'll get you added to the list. Once we get another 12, we'll get that league started as well, working with Mikey. He's helping us run that one. And again, if you are a Patreon member, you get half off. If you're a Jerry Rice tier member, you get it for free, absolutely free, just as a way for us to say thank you. And if you've been on the borderline of joining Patreon, hopefully this will help you get there. Just check it out. And if you don't like Patreon, guess what? Cancel, 100% money back guaranteed. All right, Brian, anything else, any other nuggets you got for us before we jump out of here today?
No, I don't know if we want to quickly go to the audience and see if anybody has any just general fantasy questions for the last 2 to 3 minutes.
Yes, all questions, man. We're whether it's fantasy or, if we got too much fantasy questions for you or fantasy stuff and you want to talk some 49ers, let's throw it out there. We got a couple extra minutes for sure. I'm bad about that, man. I need to do, I've had a couple people ask if we could just do a Q&A episode, and I'm like, man, yeah, we should probably definitely do that. Maybe
I'm happy to
week.
do that with you because we can it can be Niners, it can be, anything NFL related. So, I'm volunteering for that. Happy to.
There we go. I love it. Ooh, Javonte Williams. I love Javonte Williams. He was one of my favorite players out of the draft last year. Same. North Carolina, went to Denver. Now they brought back Melvin Gordon. Sorry.
Melvin Gordon, yeah.
Talk us through your thoughts on him.
So I, as a Dolphins fan, I actually wanted them to draft Williams last year. The Broncos actually jumped ahead of the Dolphins to draft him last year. I'm a big Javonte Williams fan, and I think he showed it. He was either number 1 or number 2 in broken tackles last year, and he was in a complete timeshare. Now, it is a timeshare in every sense of the word. I will say this, the offense is different, right? They've changed their coaching staff. Nathaniel Hackett's now the head coach. If I'm Hackett, as much as I like Gordon as a nice spell running back, Williams is more talented. Williams is younger. Williams is better out of the backfield. So I can't see it being 50-50. So if you're in a league where a lot of your league mates are kind of thinking it's going to be a 50-50 split, don't worry about last year. Go for Williams, invest it. I don't know if he's a first-round pick, but he might be worth a second-round pick for running backs, maybe late in the second. So yes, I think, and certainly the ceiling is really high. He could easily end up as a top 5 running back if he ends up getting 65-70% of the carries in Denver.
Yeah, I like it. Melissa, she asked this. Do you think the starting 5 O-line means we are more outside or inside zone? Yeah, man, it's different. The way that the Shanahan offense has kind of migrated to that short toss, it's still blocked the same. The only difference is the quarterback's not reaching out for the running back. They're just tossing it to him and allowing him to see it. So I think we're going to see more inside toss. And the main reason why I feel that is look at the guys we're getting, bigger guys, Elijah Mitchell, he's big, TDP, Trey Sermon, those bigger style bruiser backs. I think we're going to see more inside zone. I really, really do.
Less of the Mostert, like speedster types.
They're still going to try to get the outside with jet sweeps and, all that kind of stuff. But Ray McLeod might be getting some of those. Debo and Ayuk getting some of those. But I think it's going to keep going a little bit more inside zone. 49ers Faithful asks this. Fournette thoughts. What do you think about him down in Tampa?
So I have always kind of been down on Fournette, but he surprised me last year. So I'm a little bit more on him this year, but here are the caveats there. So yes, Ronald Jones is gone. He is now in Kansas City. But they drafted Rachaad White, and from all I'm reading from camp, Rachaad White could very well be their number one pass.
Love Rachaad White.
Right.
Love Rachaad White.
Brady loves him a nice pass catching running back. They tried to bring in Gio Bernard to be that guy, and he didn't really do it. So Fournette, by default, ended up being that guy, and that's where the difference is. Fournette actually, surprisingly, did really well as a pass catching back. I see less of that. So I still think he's going to have more than the lion's share. He will be the undisputed RB1, but I don't think he's going to get as many receptions. He's not going to get as many targets, which, if we're talking PPR, makes a big difference. Now, if it's a standard league, go Fournette all the way. I think he could easily be a top 6, top 7 standard running back.
Yeah, those touchdowns are... That's a lot. All right, right here, Local Monkey says, I'm tempted to go for Bateman. Can he stay healthy? Yeah, health is a hard thing to predict. He is young, though.
Yeah,
and
he's young.
He is healthy.
There's so few other targets. There's so few other proven receivers. Like we mentioned earlier, Mark Andrews is the undisputed wide receiver, and he's a tight end in Baltimore. I think that Baltimore's going to want to pass the ball more. I think that whole Greg Roman rushing attack, which was so good and led Lamar to the MVP a few years ago, hasn't been as dynamic. The offensive line hasn't been as good in the past few seasons, so they're going to need to throw the ball more. And Bateman is far and away the best pass receiving target outside of Andrews. So I think he's worth the risk, depending on where you get him. I wouldn't spend like a second round pick on him, but come third rounds, even with the injuries, like I would take a chance on Bateman. I think the upside, the ceiling, is worth going for. I'm going to try to draft Bateman in a number of my redraft leagues if that helps.
Nice. I like it. Man, this has been fun. Brian, it's always good with you. You always fun, bring John. Your content, the research, the knowledge. Yeah. Whew, I love it, man. All right, before we jump out of here, Brian, anything else before we say goodbye for the day?
No, as always, you guys know, check out Legit Football. If you're not already subscribed to our free daily NFL newsletter, legitfootball.com, hit join, enter the email address. We usually have a lot of Niners stuff in there just because there's a lot of Niners stuff to talk about. You can also check out my show, 30 Minutes of Football. I had Mr. John Chapman on earlier this week.
Fun, man.
So you can go to the channel, check out me and John. There was some Niners talk, there was some NFL talk. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, 30 Minutes of Football on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcasts.
Yeah, and I'll say this as well. We are next Thursday, we'll do a Q&A. Anything about the NFL, Niners, whatever. If you want to get those questions in early, you can email me, 49ersrushpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to, just, message me on Twitter or whatever at @JL_Chapman. We can get that on there. So we'll figure that out. And those are some options. Or you can just show up live, which we always prefer, and just ask them on the spot. So that's what we got going on there. All right. That's going to do it for us today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. And as always, stay strong, faithful.